Hi everyone, we're just going to wait another minute or so to get started while some people are still logging on. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for today's Intro to ICRW webinar. We're very excited to have JMT's Dougie Stanton and Taylor Boss lead us in the webinar today. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before I turn it over. If you have any questions during the webinar, please go ahead and submit them into the Q&A section as you think of them, and we will save all the questions until the end, but please do not hesitate to submit them as they come. Participants in today's webinar are eligible to receive 1 CPE credit at the completion of the webinar. At various points, you'll be prompted to answer a polling question. You must answer at least 3 of these polling questions to be eligible to receive the CPE credit. In addition to the polling questions, you must also complete the survey that will pop up at the completion of the webinar. So if you stay for the duration of the webinar, answered at least 3 of the polling questions, and complete the survey at the end, you will receive your certificate of completion, the recording, and slides in your email. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Taylor, to get us started.
Thank you, Kristen, and thanks everybody for taking the time out of your day to join. We'll be taking a look at the interactive custom report writer. So with that being said, get going. Couple quick housekeeping notes. Kristen and Karen already gone over them, but just a reminder, if you've got a question, submit it in the Q&A box in the control panel. We'll answer them at the end, and then you'll get a copy of the recording and slides emailed to you following the webinar. So that being said, what is the interactive custom report writer? You will hear me refer to it as ICRW throughout the webinar, just because the full name is a bit of a mouthful. So think of it as that abbreviation, interactive custom report writer, and that emphasis is really going to be on the interactive piece when we're looking at this. So it is a modern visual reporting tool. It's going to be different than any of the other report writers you have available in Intact. It offers enhanced user experience and interactivity. Again, high point on that interactive piece of it. You're going to be able to customize the reports for your needs. It's going to have more customizability than some of the other report writers within Intact. And it's going to provide some analytical tools to address complex reporting needs. And you can add this to dashboards within your Intact instance to really maximize the interactivity that you and your report consumers are going to have. So it's not just for the person who's building the report, maintaining it. The interactivity is also for those people that are running and consuming these reports, which I think is a really, really important feature for us to highlight and take a look at. So what are the benefits? Again, you're going to have much more robust reporting features that are available within ICRW. It kind of takes all of the reporting with Intact and brings it above and beyond what you're used to. It will let you build pivot tables that'll let you expand by time periods and or dimensions within your report. You also have the ability to do some more complex column calculations that are going to utilize functions and conditions. So some of the things that you might have traditionally had to send out into Excel, you may be able to now do within Intact using the interactive custom report writer. And again, end users of the report can manipulate the display of the data in the report based on the parameters that you set when building it. So if you have traditionally had to do multiple variations of Excel pivot tables to accommodate different report consumers in your organization because they like to see the report displayed a little differently, ICRW may allow you to leave some of that in the past and really focus on the data you're pulling in, how it's being pulled in, and let the users themselves determine the ordering of the columns or what we are sectioning or filtering by when they're running the report itself. For the people that are building reports or maintaining them, another big benefit is that you're able to drag and drop to add or remove your columns, sections, or runtime prompts on the fly. So instead of having to go make a change, save the change, view the report, see if you like that change, go back and make adjustments, the ICRW is much more real time as far as how you're going to be consuming and seeing the data that you're pulling together. And it allows you to course correct pretty quickly or make quick adjustments because, again, you're seeing the effect on the data as you're building this report out. So that seeing as you build, as soon as you add a column, you're going to see the results for it. So you're going to know right away if the column you pulled in is the right column based on whether data is displaying in it or not. And one of my favorite things is building those pivot tables that summarize your data without needing to export it to Excel. So it really consolidates a lot of that report building and allows you to really build kind of a template for potential pivot tables or Excel style views that your report consumers want to see. Interactive custom report requirements. For some reason, it's just starting with my bottom bullet point here. So I guess we'll get a little bit ahead of ourselves. But some knowledge of conditional statements and functions is recommended. It isn't necessary. There's still a lot of reporting you can do without this knowledge. However, if you're really wanting to take advantage of the more advanced features in ICRW, having at least a base knowledge of those conditional statements and functions is going to be very, very helpful for you. Doesn't mean you can't learn it if it's not something you're already familiar with, just something that gives you an extra edge when using this particular report writer. Important thing to consider, it is an additional reporting subscription. It's a much more powerful report writer. There's some additional functionality and things that come with it. So there is that additional subscription piece for it. And with that, you'll get not just the report writer, but Intact also includes some template reports in a library that we'll take a look at a little later on. So they're really giving you a lot with this subscription to get you up and going in this report writer quickly. Some other requirements here is you would want to have the appropriate security rights associated with either customization or platform services. Generally, we're going to see this in platform services. So any users that are going to be building reports within ICRW and or consuming those reports, you'd want to make sure have the permissions to view ICRW from that platform services subscription. You would also want to have a knowledge of Sage Intacct, including the standard reports, so you know which reporting areas to select to get the appropriate data out of this report writer. So it is very dependent on the location of the data, where it's stored. The reporting areas you choose will drive what pieces of information you're going to have access to. So having that basic knowledge of Intacct, how it's storing your data, where that data lives is going to be very, very helpful when it comes to building these reports. Now, the components of an interactive custom report. I wanted to bring a visual in here before we dive in and take a look at it, just so you can get an idea of what these different pieces are. So our reporting areas, you'll find down there, you're going to have a base reporting area to start. In this example I brought in, we've got a GL budget and GL entry reporting area. When you expand that main reporting area, you're going to have the opportunity to look at the attributes, which is going to be specific traits or fields related to the GL budget or the GL entry item. Dimensions are going to obviously really focus in on your dimensions within the reporting area you've chosen. And then our actual financial figures, our number figures are going to live in that measures file in our reporting area. So we'll see in this example, we've got time-related measures, which is left collapsed. You'll see why when we look at this later. actual amount, actual transaction amount, and budget amount. So those different amounts that you might want to pull into those reports are going to be found in that measures folder. And then down below that, we've got the related objects. So related objects is going to contain additional areas of data that are connected to the reporting area you've chosen. So depending on what reporting area you've chosen, you will have related objects such as potentially like a GL transaction as a related object that you can pull some data in from as well. What related objects you'll see, how many, again, is going to depend on your initial reporting area you've chosen. So this is where that knowing where the data lives in Intact that you're wanting to pull comes into play. If you pick the right reporting area, you'll have access to those other pieces of information you're needing to pull into your report. Dragging and dropping columns into our reporting view. So here, I know that, I don't know if it's displaying the same way for you guys, but it's a little bit harder to see the break between the columns here, but we've got a column for account. We have a column specific for location, department, year, quarter, so on and so forth. You're able to drag and drop these columns into the reporting view to start pulling the data in. You can also drag and drop the columns between each other to rearrange the order that you're looking at. The other nice feature that we have, and again, we'll take a look at this when we dive in, is you can drag and drop these columns to, instead of displaying as a column, display as a section of the report, or as what's called a table prompt, to where you can really narrow your focus on exactly what you're looking at in that view of your report. So it gives us lots of options depending on what we need to see. You're also able to visualize your report while you're building it. So as you're making these changes, you're going to see the real-time effect of the changes you're making. It helps for a much quicker turnaround and course correction if you've made a change that isn't really going to give you the information or the display you are actually looking for, so that you can backtrack and fix that to get it to display the way you want to see it. And then our final little arrow here is we've got some smart menus to help manage the components. So in this example, you'll see that I've opened the smart menu for our actual column, and it's going to allow you to choose to sort either ascending, descending, show a row level grand total, include or exclude a column, as well as moving the columns. So it gives lots of variety. And again, depending on the column you choose, that's going to drive some of the options you will see in these smart menus. So column formulas is something that I brought up prior. You're able to, I might be missing some of my arrows in here. So you can override default field names from within this define tab. You can edit column properties. So if Intact is displaying your column title, which you'll see right here is grayed out, there's that arrow. I knew they were in there. You'll see that you can override the field names here. So in this case, our column title right now is set as transaction amount. And in these brackets, you're able to see where it's pulling that data from. You can click this custom headings and then edit that column title to display exactly the way you would want to see it display. So you're not held with the Intact label that they've assigned. You can really tweak the column titles and column headers based on your internal nomenclature. So what will make sense to your report viewers. You're also able to create these new calculations and or add a calculation to a column. So in here, we're starting to build one out. The calculations are a little bit more of that advanced area of ICRW. So if don't be surprised if we don't dive too deep into it in this intro webinar, but it's something you can absolutely get more information on, and something that we'll probably be covering in one of our pre-con sessions for Innovate, where Dougie and I will be discussing some of the advanced reporting and dashboard capabilities in Intact. So if you have some interest in these calculations, I highly recommend you attend that if you're able to. and then conditional formulas. So not only do we have these basic arithmetic style calculations we can do, there are some conditional formulas such as if-then style conditions that can be leveraged with these column calculations. So again, very, very powerful, something that is not traditionally seen within a report writer within Intact. So does some really, really cool things. Now, reporting areas, I already dived into them a little bit, but we'll take a little bit of a discussion here. So reporting areas are going to include that primary object folder. So our AP bills up here is our primary reporting area. It's going to also give us access to AP bill detail, where we've got our attributes folder. This is going to be those individual records within an area. So AP bill detail attribute might be that memo field that you're completing in your line entries of your accounts payable bills. Can also include some of those dimensions that are tagged. The dimensions folder is going to include those activated dimensions and some of the fields relating to those dimensions. And then our measures is going to be where we have our amounts and our other financial data contained. So if you're looking for a number to come through in this report, measures is likely going to be where you're going to find that. And then these related objects folders are going to be objects that are related to the highest level folder in the reporting area. So all of these related objects are going to be what's related to AP bills. If we open up our allocation, we're not necessarily going to see all the related objects to the allocation because they may not be related to the AP bill itself. So when you're thinking about related objects you can touch, always tie it back to what is your primary reporting area that you've selected. That's what's going to drive what's available. So capabilities with these reporting areas. What are we really looking at here? We're going to be able to do some object-based reporting, and we can take a look at our transaction level data. So where with the financial report writer, a lot of times you're looking at balances, whether it is a for the period balance, a beginning of period balance, an end of period balance. The interactive custom report writer lets you get down to that transaction level of data. So you can get very fine levels of detail with this report writer. It does have advanced formatting, filtering, timeline analysis, and cross-dimension grouping. So if you've been restricted with the custom report writer, for example, the standard custom report writer with an Intact, as far as how that data displays what the report looks like, the ICRW is going to give you more customizability and more options for tweaking that specific formatting within your report. It's also going to give us a lot more options on filtering and how we're filtering, what we're filtering by, when we're filtering. So you've got quite a bit of variety there. And then timeline analysis. There's going to be time-based columns that you can work with that will allow you to group it based on, you know, the fiscal year of the posting date, the month of the posting date. Lots of different timeline-based analysis can be done with this. And then that cross-dimension grouping. We can pull multiple dimensions into an ICRW report and kind of on the fly, and when designing and running the report, determine which dimensions are we going to group by, how are we going to group them, which one takes the top priority. It gives you much more flexibility, much more options than you might see in some of the other report writers within Intact. You're also going to see the capability to create those pivot tables, the custom layouts. And one of the things that I know is always most important to users and report consumers is drill downs. That's a very, very common question I receive about whether or not the interactive custom report writer can give you those drill down capabilities that you're used to within the financial report writer, the custom report writer. And the answer to that is yes, but you build it. So it's one of those areas where it's just something that needs to be built in when you're creating the report. Once it's there, it's available and it's used, and you can even determine which column is driving the drill down. So not only do you have the drill downs, but you've got more flexibility with them, which I think is a really cool feature to utilize. So considerations when we're thinking about our reporting area and making the choice of which reporting area are we starting with. First thing to think about is what type of information are you wanting to pull into your report? So there is a difference between header level information, so that one-to-one relationship with your transaction. Think of things like a bill number for your AP bill, the vendor for the AP bill, the message or description for that bill. If we're thinking about journal entries, the reference field for your journal entry, the journal type, these things that are determined once for a transaction and not necessarily being recorded on every piece of the line detail when you're filling out that transaction. Whereas that line item detail, that's going to be your accounts, your amounts, the dimensions that are going to be tagged at the line item detail instead of up at that header level. It'll include the memo line, things like that. The big distinguishing feature is line item detail is going to be in those entry lines. Header level is going to be before you get to that entries table. Now, if you pick a reporting area that primarily focuses on header level information, it doesn't mean you can't get to the line item detail. In many cases, and like we saw in the AP bill example previously, you can get to the AP bill detail from an AP bill reporting area, but that AP bill header level reporting area may not connect to some of the other reporting areas you're wanting to pull information from. So these are the kinds of things you'll want to keep in mind when you're selecting it. What related objects do you need access to? What are you wanting to pull information from? So make sure that the reporting area you choose is in some way related to the other areas of the system you want to pull information in from. For example, the accounts payable based reporting area, accounts receivable reporting areas may not be included in your related objects folder. Now, the nice thing is here is it doesn't mean that you can't pull accounts payable information and accounts receivable information into the same report. It just means you're going to have to go about it in a more advanced way. So one of the other things that ICRW does allow for, which is a much more advanced area and a discussion that would definitely need to be had another day, but you can use custom SQL to combine unrelated reporting areas to pull that information in. So even the out of the box features with ICRW, the quick and easy to adapt to report building with it isn't the end of the road. You also have that custom SQL that's available to help accomplish some of the even more advanced reporting needs that you may come across. So when we're in ICRW, there's a couple of tabs that are going to be really important, especially when you're just getting going and learning to use this report writer. The first one you'll hit on is going to be that Define tab. And like the name would suggest, that Define tab is going to define what data you're going to pull into your report. So this is one of those areas where you're able to start pulling in and selecting the columns you want to pull into the report. This is where you can drag and drop those fields in. Now, I will say, for me personally, I tend to select my columns I'm pulling in from the Refine tab, which we'll take a look at next, just because I like to see those immediate results. However, you can pull them in from the Define tab as well. The Define tab is also where we're going to have the ability to add filters that control what data displays in the report. And the filters we're talking about here are really filtering out what even makes it into this report. So this would be a filter that is built into the report. Your runtime users and your report consumers aren't going to necessarily have the opportunity to decide to use or not use these filters. These filters prevent data from even coming in if it's filtered out. There are other ways that we can do some filtering within ICRW, either as a runtime prompt when a user's selecting to run the data, or as a table prompt, which we will take a look at when we do a quick demo a little bit later. Your refine tab is going to be where you're previewing the data. So this is where you're going to see what completes those columns that you've decided to pull into your report. This is where you can decide to sort the data by one or more of the columns within your report. You got the option to sort ascending or descending. There's options for adding an ascending or descending sort if you're needing to layer on sorting by multiple columns. And there's also going to be the option if you need to clear all of the sorts in the view. You have the ability to reorder your columns from this tab, drag and drop them so that you select what displays in what order. You can add totals and grand totals, either subtotals before or after values, as well as that row level grand total that's going to look at the rows itself when it totals up. And then we have the prompts tab. So this prompts tab is going to be for the runtime prompts that your users are going to make selections for before they run the report. So again, one of the kind of 3 layers of filtering that could be used with these ICRW reports. You're going to prompt based on a specific column that is displayed in the report. That's what I see most commonly used. So if we're pulling in our account and our posting date and our location and department, each of those columns you've pulled into your report can be one of the column prompts that are used for your users to select to only look at a specific department or a specific location or specific accounts or groups of accounts. There's also a feature called Use More Columns that you can select a field from the reporting area you've chosen that you may not have necessarily made a column within your report. So you're not restricted just to the columns you've included, but also other columns and pieces of information that you elected not to pull into your report can still drive what gets filtered out of that report at runtime. There's also a more advanced type of prompt that can be used called a variable prompt. And this is a presentation variable prompt that lets you collect user input that isn't based on a specific column. So for example, you can build a variable prompt for a from date and a to date. You can also use these presentation variables in calculations and filters as well. And this is one of those more advanced type of prompts. So another one of the more advanced areas of ICRW that's better dug into and looked at in and of itself in another discussion. So we won't really see that today, but be aware it is possible and it's something that's frequently done with the ICRW. Our filter and selection steps. So you're able to, I've got, where are my images? There they are. So we're able to filter, the filters are going to control the data selected from the reporting area. You have the ability to create filters based on the columns included in the report. You can use complex and or logic, so you can layer multiple filters on top of each other and have it be filtered by this and this and this, or it's a filter by this and this or by this. You're also able to use selection steps to further refine the data that's displayed within the report after that initial selection. So this won't necessarily control the data included in the report, but it can help you determine what gets pulled in. And it's going to apply only to attribute columns. It's not going to apply to those measure columns, for example. Now the columns, calculations, and functions. You can add calculation columns to perform calculations on your data. So if you're pulling in 2 separate columns and you need to do some form of calculation, you're able to create a brand new column using the calculation you build to then display within your report. Those calculations might include functions like basic operators or a more comprehensive set of functions that is available for you to choose from. There's that image I was looking for. So this is just kind of a very, very sky high view of some of the functions that are available. Each of these expand into the individual functions that are available for you to choose from and explore. Those calculations might drive filters or filter the data. It could, the calculations can be performed with the columns, with variables, with operators. You've really got a lot of flexibility on what you're going to be able to use within these columns in the report. And then that report library that I talked about. So Intact includes pre-built template reports with your ICRW subscription to get you started on the report writer instead of having to build them from scratch. They're really great for streamlining your report creation. I tend to use them as kind of my first go-to is if someone's asking for something specific out of the interactive custom report writer, I'm going to look through Intact's report library and see, is there something that Intact has already built and provided that gets close to what they want so that we're just making some adjustments and customizing it to their specific need before we go and we build it from scratch. It can also be really great to just help you conceptualize the type of reporting you can do within ICRW, just to get those creative juices flowing and really get an idea of what this report writer can do because it is so different from the other report writers that are available within Intact. Now, that being said, let's dive into the ICRW. I have a demo file that I'm going to pull up that we can take a look at. So let me get my demo up here. So when we're navigating to the interactive custom report writer, I like to go through reports, alt tab, and down under advanced. It lives right underneath those custom reports. You'll have to excuse me if my internet's a little extra slow today. We've been having some storms, so I think that might have affected it. There we go. Okay. So you'll see there's some reports in here I've been playing around with. We're going to go right to our report library. So these are all of those template reports that Intact makes available for you to use. And for our purposes today, we're going to take a look at this GL summary report. Now I go right into edit here. And whenever you're working with any of the reports from the Quick Start library, you're going to have to save a duplicate of that report. What that does is it retains the template that you have available in the Quick Start library unchanged, and the copy you save is going to be the copy that you make edits to. I feel like we should have the Jeopardy theme playing while it's loading. It would make it a whole lot more entertaining. There we go. Okay. So see, it dropped us right into the Refine tab, but before we start making any edits, we're going to save our copy. And we're going to save it to the file here. We'll call it, go ahead and keep our name. I don't think I've already got one named that. Perfect. And so once we've saved our duplicate, we're going to go back to our ICRW list. And we've got our GL P&L summary available right here. So now we're going to click edit, and this is where we're able to actually adjust what's going to be used in this report. Okay. So we're going to expand our reporting area here because I'm looking at this and it's a really nice, simple report, but my first instinct is I want to pull in my location. So I'm going to open up my attributes column here. And you can adjust the width of this display here. I almost always make my reporting area a little bit wider so I can better see which fields I'm working with. And we're going to scroll down to our location. So you'll notice when you're looking at these fields, you'll have location and location name. Location is going to just give us the ID. Since we're working with the demo file and I don't have those location IDs memorized, let's go ahead and grab the name here. Now you'll see it's dropped in a new column for us, our location name. And what it's done is it's expanded how it's displaying the report from before to break down our amounts by the locations that have been tagged. and it dropped it into all of the views that were available with this template report we grabbed. Now, I do like the location in here, but I don't quite like the fact that it's going by account type, then category, and then location. So I could drop my location in this view all the way to the left. And you'll see that now it's breaking down by location first. So we can see Colson Initiative here, income statement, account type, and then revenue and expenses, so that our revenue and expenses are broken down by our location first. Now, maybe that's still not quite the way you wanted to see it, and instead we want it here. Then we've got our income statement, account type, Colson Initiative, revenue, expenses, and then our amounts. So you're really able to move this around based on where it's best going to fit for your needs. Now, clicking this little magnifying glass up top, we have some options for our reports and our report properties. One of the things I like to do is I come in and I make all the interactions available for my users, unless I have a reason to restrict them. Just makes it a little bit easier. And we can select to include zero numbers. When we're adding new columns, are we going to display it in existing views or new views only? Just some additional little features that we can make selections upon. You also have these properties available in each individual view. So we'll see, we're loading, there we go. We've got our magnifying glass up available for this pivot table view. We've got another one down here. So you can actually change some of these settings on a view by view basis within your reports you've built. And this report is actually a really great example of the fact that you can have multiple views of a report. So multiple different ways to look at the data you've compiled together in the same report so that your users have access to all of these different views by running the same report. Now, let's scroll up here. We're going to make a couple of extra changes. I also want to pull in one of our time-related attributes. So let's pull in our posting date for our fiscal year. And I like to do this from that transaction level. And you see we have our time-related attributes folder here. So we've gone into our related objects. GL transaction is related to GL entry. And we've got time-related attributes. We'll expand this out a little bit wider. And so all of these that you're seeing listed are going to be based on that posting date and give you information about when that posting date is. So let's drop in our posting date fiscal year. So we've got this fiscal year that's been brought in, and it's really great, gives us great information, but I don't quite like where it's displaying and how it's separating my data. So let's instead move it to the far right and sort by our fiscal date first. So now it's going to group by our posting date, fiscal year, account type, location, and then category. Let's take that a step further and let's just section off this report based on our fiscal year. So now what it's done is it's actually broken the same report into different sections, one for each fiscal year where we have data that's been posted. Now, again, this is great, gives me good information, but it's a lot to have to scroll through. So let's take this one step further. And let me grab hold of that guy. We're going to call it a pivot table prompt. And so what this is going to do is move it into a drop down up here. So you're selecting which fiscal year you're going to view based on this selection. So you're only having to look at one fiscal year at a time. Now you'll notice I've been making all these edits in this view up here. But down here, our fiscal year stayed exactly where it was. So let's bring him up and make him a table prompt as well. And then we'll scroll down through here. I'm going to actually take our location and we'll sort by him first. So we'll have all of our revenue and then our expenses. And then we've got one more view down at here at the bottom, and we're going to make our location name. And a couple more edits to that report down at the bottom, because that's a pretty long one since it's pulling in detail. Pull him down here. Oh, well, that's lovely time. There we go. Now, what I'm going to do, we're going to grab our posting here and make it one of our prompts. And then we're going to take our category and make it one of our prompts. And so now it makes it much cleaner for us to look at instead of having to look at a really long transactional register here. So we'll say that we like our changes we've made, and let's save this report. So now that it's been saved, we can go back to our list and we're going to actually run it as if we're a report consumer. So we've got our GL P&L summary here, and we'll just hit run. There we go. So these filter prompts were already built in from Intact because we got this from the Quick Start library. We didn't take a too close of a look at those today just because I want to make sure I get through all this information for you guys. But we could have edited or tweaked these as we needed to. For now, we're just going to view it as is. And you'll see here's these different reports. So we've got view one up here with our table prompt. Let's look at 2018. And then in view two, we'll get that down to 2018. So we're looking at the same year's data here. And then down below, we'll do 2018. And let's take a look at our contributions category. So we've got different accounts here under contributions. And what I want to do is let's add a subtotal after our values. So since that view at the bottom is more of a detailed one, it's actually pulling in multiple accounts, any account that was assigned to the category of contributions. So by adding that subtotal, we just told the system, I want you to give me a subtotal for each separate account that's listed here. So now we're seeing a subtotal for our account 4,110 contributions of 2,163,479. and 479. And then our donated goods and services, we have a subtotal of 162,281. So each time we right click and we would add a subtotal here. We're able to subtotal by multiple columns as well. And then we've got grand totals that will start to show up. There we go. So here's our contributions total, donated total. I guess on this one, everything was falling under that general location, but otherwise you'd see multiple locations totaled up instead of a general total and grand total that are the exact same number here. Now, from this page, when you've run the report, you'll notice we have our handy dandy add to dashboard button available here. So we'll go ahead and say we're going to add this report to our dashboard. And let's add this to our, where's my Jumpstart? We're going to add it to our Jumpstart dashboard and we'll call it GLPL summary. Then we'll make it public so others can see it. We'll click OK. So by adding it to the dashboard, we've gone ahead and memorized that ICRW report. So you'll see it now under your memorized reports. But if we come back in here and we go to our dashboard and we select our Jumpstart dashboard, you'll see we now have a new dashboard component that is beginning to generate. So in this case, if you're familiar with dashboards, you can edit the component settings to kind of adjust how it displays. Because we've got multiple views in this one, it is a long ICRW report, so there's a little bit of scrolling in here. But you'll notice that even from within the dashboard, because we've given our report users the capability to interact with this report, they can, from their dashboard, rearrange the ordering of their columns. They could come in and add some of those subtotals that they might want to see here. But you'll notice that grand total, the totaling that we set before we added this report to the dashboard, did come through because that was part of those memorized settings. Our users will also be able to use these view prompts so that from their dashboard, without using dashboard filters even, they can filter what data is coming into the tables that they are looking at. And if at any point you need to refresh that report, make sure you have the most current data, or even just set it back to the beginning of where it was memorized, you'll hit that refresh button and it's going to wipe it clean and let you come in and start again with how you're looking at it. So they could decide that, nope, I want to see it by location. Or they could come up and decide that they want to only look at one location at a time. There we go. A little bit touchy today. And then they can make those selections to just filter that view and just consume one location and one fiscal year at a time. Now, get back here. So from there, beyond just the basics of the interactive custom report writer, where else could you take this? What are some other reports that you might be able to generate with this? So I pulled in a couple of examples. Obviously, we don't have time to dive in and look at all of them in detail in 1 hour. That'd be a little bit much even for someone that can talk as fast as I do. But AP top spend, do you want to see what your top vendors are? How much has been billed for them? How much have you paid? What's the total due? How many bills have you had from them? And again, keep in mind, all of this is a pivot table. You can rearrange the data, have it sectioned off the way you need to see it. So you're not restricted to just the view that I brought in as our examples. You could also review your 1099 data, look through it, determine, do you have all of the information you might need for a vendor? How much did you spend that is eligible for a 1099? What form and box do they need? What were the payment dates? So in this example, it's a detailed report that'll show you each of the payments that technically qualify that vendor for a 1099. So it's just kind of another layer of 1099 reporting you can do to make sure you're capturing everyone and go through each of those transactions. You'll notice in this one, we've got some blue links. So this report has drill downs that are built in. any of these blue fonts, just like anywhere else in Intact, that tells you it's a drill down. It tells you can dig in and get deeper information. There's also some other reports in there that might help you anticipate upcoming expenses with projected cash outlay. So in this case, Hode Insurance has a recurring bill. So it's showing you the bills that's set to recur so you can get ahead and, I know we're in 2024 now, we're going to demo data in here, but it would show us from January 2019 into 2020. It's the fiscal years up here. I was like, that doesn't sound right. We got fiscal years in play here so that that January of 2020 technically falls in the 2019 fiscal year. You're able to see what period you're going to owe what. So you have an idea of what's upcoming, what will need paid.
So Taylor,
Yep.
we are out of time. Do you want to wrap up this report and take some questions?
Absolutely. This was my last example I had in there.
Cool.
So that was timed perfectly. So then header level and detail level in the same view. This is something that I've heard people ask for in other areas of the system where you could have a vendor aging report that then lets you easily see what detail is making up the aging segments in the bills that are due for these vendors. It's one of the more advanced reports that can be built to get that master level detail connection built. But once it's there, it's a really wonderful tool to use. So here's my little closing slide, but let's take a look. Do we have any open questions? All right.
No questions.
No questions. All right. Well, if you would like more information or anything to hear any more about that ICRW, feel free to contact us. Again, highly recommend you attend at the Innovate Pre-Con session if you're able to do so. We'll have some really exciting information to share with you there. And thank you for attending. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Doggy, Kristen, anything else I need to follow up with?
Thank you very much. There's a lot of detail here. It's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
No, it was great.
Okay.
And
remember to take the survey when the webinar ends to get your CPE credit.
thank you all.